Okay, John Hooper. I'll just try and get this a bit bigger so you can read it along. John Hooper was born in Somerset in 1495. Little is known of his early life, but he took a degree at Merton College, Oxford in 1519 and became a Cistercian monk, possibly living for some time at Blackfriars Friary in Gloucester. Leaving monastic life, he returned to Oxford and became acquainted with the writings of the Swiss reformers Zwingli and Bullinger, who held that the only authority for truth was the Bible, not the Church. At this time, the people had no English Bible to guide them, and the prayers of the Church were in Latin. He became converted to Swiss Protestantism, claiming that through it I became rightly acquainted with the Lord. Leaving Oxford, he was employed by Sir Thomas Arundel, but soon fled the country, fearing that his religious opinions put his life in danger. He lived for several years among people of the Reformed faith in Switzerland, and during this period married Anne de Tusclas of Antwerp, who gave him two children, Rachel and Daniel. Sermons delivered by Hooper, printed in 1550. On the accession of the 9-year-old Edward VI in 1547, he returned to England and was appointed chaplain to the Protector, the Duke of Somerset. He preached twice every Sunday, drawing great crowds, and was nominated Bishop of Gloucester after impressing the king with a course of sermons, but his consecration was delayed until 1551 by his objections to the ritual vestments and oath. He worked tirelessly in the diocese and was very concerned at the appalling ignorance of the local clergy, 168 of whom could not even repeat the 10 Commandments, and many of whom spent their time in hunting, hawking and gambling. He was an outspoken critic of many church practices, causing stone altars to be replaced by plain wooden tables, candles to be banned from churches and road screens, tabernacles and painted images to be destroyed. He was also especially good to the poor, inviting them into his own house, where his table was described as being spread with a good store of meat and set full of beggars and poor folk. But when Mary Tudor came to the throne in 1553, she set about undoing the religious reforms of the preceding years. The married priests were driven from the churches, the images replaced and the mass restored. Hooper was sent to the Fleet prison in London, where he remained for 17 months in horrible conditions, but refused to recant and was condemned to death by burning at the stake. Sent to Gloucester to be executed, he was met by a crowd of people and tears and blessings. The day before his execution was spent at a house in Westgate Street in prayer and in speaking to those who came to see him. On the morning of 9th of February 1555, he was led to his place of execution, just outside St Mary's Gate, marked now by his monument, but overshadowed then by a great elm tree. The place was crowded with over 7,000 spectators. Even the boughs of the tree were filled. The dawn and chapter of the cathedral were forced to watch from the windows of their chapel house in St Mary's Street. He was bound to the stake and the fire lit, but it took 3 attempts to make a hot fire enough to kill him, and he cried out, "For God's love, good people, give me more fire." His ordeal then lasted about 3/4 of an hour, but he endured the fire with the meekness of a lamb, dying as quietly as a child in his bed. Bishop Hooper was not the last person to be burnt on the spot. The following year, Thomas Cricker, a bricklayer, and Thomas Dowry, a blind boy who had visited Bishop Hooper the day before his death, were both martyred in the Protestant cause. The carved stone monument to Hooper was erected in 1862. During evacuations for the foundations, the stump of the charred wooden stake was discovered, which can now be seen along with other artefacts associated with him in Gloucester Folk Museum, Westgate Street. The Hooper stake, believed by the Victorian finders to be a relic of the martyrdom. The house in Westgate Street, where Bishop Hooper is said to have spent the day before his execution, now part of the Gloucester Folk Museum. There's a picture there.